led Dipu Das outside the gates of his factory, and then he was dragged to this tree.
Namaskar from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and good evening to all of you, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, India, Nepal, Africa, Europe, etc. Today, we are going to discuss a very sensitive topic, the recent mob lynching and burning alive of Dipu Chandra Das in Bhaluka, Mymensingh district of Bangladesh. Dipu was a Hindu male and he was falsely accused of blasphemy, and he was burnt alive, which used to happen in the 15th, 14th century. Copernicus was burnt, etc. For us, it's very shocking. It's beyond shocking. But that's not my point. There are several things that I want to present today. The first thing is people both on the left and the right are talking about this as a hate crime. It's not a hate crime. It's a symptom of genocide. Secondly, this is very alike. In fact, it's very similar structure that gang rape has. So it's a feminist analysis that we are going to do. Please stay till the end, because we are going to build up and see how it's neither a hate crime nor is it anything other than games of power like gang rape is. And we will do a feminist analysis. So first, let's start with the feminist analysis. And I'm going to share a screen on this, and we are going to go through it very carefully. So let's see. So he was falsely accused, etc. That's the story. He was burnt alive, which shocked us. Now, what is a hate crime? We will make this distinction first. It wasn't a hate crime. According to the United Nations, hate crimes are criminal acts motivated by bias or intolerance against people or group characteristics like race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability. This is the definition of a hate crime. But what I'm saying is, and I'll show through feminist analysis, that Dipu Chandra Das's burning alive was not a hate crime. It was a symptom of genocide. So let's define genocide. This is the definition of a hate crime given by the United Nations. First, I'll go through Lemkin's definition, which is the basis of the United Nations definition. Genocide is the destruction of a nation or an ethnic group. Genocide does not necessarily mean the immediate destruction of a nation, except when accomplished by mass members of all members of a nation. It is extended rather to signify a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of the essential foundation of life of national groups with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. So this is the definition. Please look at the definition. The destruction of a nation or an ethnic group does not necessarily mean the immediate destruction of a nation or the group, except when accomplished by mass destruction of all members of the group, which never happened anywhere. It's extended rather to signify a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of the essential foundation of life of national group with the aim of annihilation of group themselves. This excludes Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not genocides by this definition. Why? Because there are several reasons. The first reason is it doesn't tally with the definition that we just gave. And the second reason is, as we'll go into the next slide, we'll talk about that. On the other hand, the killing of Native Americans can be called a genocide because, see, one of the things that was done with Native Americans were the children were taken away and assimilated. So the culture was destroyed because the next generation is completely their culture of whatever Native American culture they had, Navajo or any other cultures, they would be destroyed because of complete assimilation, language destruction. That's genocide. And also there is temporality, happens over generations. Remember, the Kashmiri Pandits were not destroyed at once. There are 7 exoduses. So ethnic cleansing is part of genocide, but it's not the whole of genocide. The children were forcibly taken, converted. So that's also genocide. Then, now, the most important thing in genocide is the intent. It is an intent to completely annihilate a group of people, and it happens over generation. I personally find Pandit Jonaraj, who wrote the third Raj Tarangini, which is not very much read, but it should be, there he gives a word for genocide. He calls it Jati Vidwangs, like taking the branch and roots of a tree. When you destroy the branch of a tree, what happens is you just destroy one part of the tree. It still grows, but when you uproot it, which is jati vidwangs, the complete jati or the race is destroyed. That's what genocide is. And the most important thing is intent. Why? Because it may not happen all at once, but the intention is to ultimately completely destroy the nation, annihilate. And that need not be killing, it could be forced conversion. It could be through the occupation of the land and the womb of women, so that you change the entire race, because the next generation then would be of a different race and different culture. Now I'm going to give a feminist analysis of patriarchy and show how what happened to Dipu Das in Bangladesh on 18th December 2025 is very akin to rape. But in order to do the feminist analysis of patriarchy, we have to go a little bit deeper into what patriarchy I'm talking about. The first thing we have to know, feminist theory is not one thing. There are liberal feminists like Mary Wollstonecraft. There are Marxist feminists like Heidi Hartman and Ferguson Folbray. There are socialist feminists. Ferguson Folbray are more socialist, and Heidi Hartman is more a feminist. Then there are psychoanalytic feminists. Then there are radical feminists like Shulamit Firestone. So I can't present all of this, neither do we have time nor are there necessity. I'll present Marxist feminist, radical feminist, and then I'll do a little bit, I'll go through the radical feminist point of view of Catherine McKinnon, and then present my point. So let's go through the Marxist feminists. First, let's see what Marx says, the part that we need for our theory. According to Marx, society, why does society move? What is the see, there's energy in movement. When we are moving something from here to say, this is a book, I'm moving this book from here to here, I needed some energy. If I don't have the energy, I cannot move. Similarly, Marx asked the question, what makes society move? From one stage of history to another stage, for example, from the tribal to the agricultural. And he conceived of a metaphor of a two-storied building, the base and the superstructure. See, he was working under the Enlightenment model, the physics model. So there is a cause-effect relationship. And the cause is the tribal, what he calls the mode of production and the relations of production, which in turn produces the effect. This is, he is modeling on physics. So what is the cause in each level? If you see on the left hand side, there are 4 stages of history: tribal, agricultural, feudal, capitalist. And on the right hand side, in the lighter row, there are the modes of production, relations of production. What are modes of production? They are the ways we produce our daily lives. It can be tribal, we can hunt and gather, although, that's a little bit of racist way of saying, but people just hunted and gathered. Then they discovered agriculture. The modes of production was irrigation and growing things. Then feudal, control of self-labor, people used to work, and then capitalist, industrial. So the modes of production are the bottom ones, and those are the causes. And when those move, then the superstructure moves. So let's understand this. I said there are 2 things in the base: modes of production, relations of production. What are relations of production? They are the way we relate to each other determined by the fundamental mode of production. In tribal mode of production, I'm the tribesman, you are one of the tribal members. In agricultural mode of production, maybe I'm the landlord holder of land and you're the peasant. In feudal mode of production, I'm the feudal lord and you myself. And in capitalist mode of production, I control the mode of production and probably you are my employee. So that those modes of production, according to Marx, are outside of our control. They're determined by the economic mode of production, the stage of history we are in. Now, these are the causes, the organizing factor of society, which in the superstructural level gives rise to tribal state and tribal culture, agricultural state and agricultural culture. So, what is in the superstructural level? In the superstructural level, there is culture determined by the fundamental mode of production, state. The fact that we have a democratic state, according to Marx, is a reflection of the fundamental mode of production. The fact that in French, before the French Revolution, there was a feudal state of monarchical state is a reflection of the feudal mode of production. So you got the point. I'm not going to go further into it. Now see how someone like Heidi Hartman took that model of base and superstructure and made what we call in feminist theory the dual systems. So she's trying to understand patriarchy. She's a feminist, Marxist feminist. She's saying that she's only analyzing capitalist system. She's not analyzing the previous systems. So the capitalist system, only a few control the modes of production in the base level, the economic mode of production. And that in the superstructural level gives rise to the culture of inequality and power. So you have powerful people, powerless people, because not everyone controls the mode of production. So it's also very deterministic, like Marx. But what she did with the Marxist dual structure is she made a split in the middle. She says patriarchy is in the superstructural level. It is produced in capitalist system because that's the only system she's analyzing, which is a problem in her theory, because because of the special control of women's labor in the domestic sphere, labor around reproduction, production, childbearing, child rearing, and in the external world, low wage labor, caregivers, and so forth. So the special control of women's labor in the base gives rise to the culture of patriarchy. So what is she doing? She's making patriarchy a cultural effect of the fundamental mode of production. So it's not a base, it's not an organizing factor of society. It's in the superstructural level, according to Heidi Hartman. Shulamit Firestone, though, is a radical feminist. And for her, patriarchy is always there. It's all these modes of production: tribal, agricultural, feudal, and capitalist. In all of these modes of production, the inequality is generated through the control of modes of reproduction, labor power. That's why slaves were taken, because you needed labor. That's why women are controlled, because you needed another kind of labor, which is reproduction. So whether it's feudal or capitalist or agricultural, it doesn't matter, because for her, where Marx was wrong, his method was right. The mode of production gives rise to the cultural effect, but where Marx was wrong was he thought it was a control of the modes of production. No, the main conflict was the control of the modes of reproduction, the control of labor power. That's why they took slaves. That's why they oppressed women, so they produced more children, because human beings are the only one who can do not only labor but rational labor, because we can think. So, and whoever controls the best skilled labor in capitalism, the last one, also controls patriarchy. So that's Shulamit Firestone. For her, there has to be a feminist revolution where everyone can reproduce. There'll be no gender, artificial reproduction, so on. We're not going into this. For us, with this, the lynching and the burning of Dipu Das is directly related to this to some extent, but to the question of rape. Now we get an idea of feminist theory. What is rape? See, Catherine McKinnon says rape is not biological. Rape is about power. Rape is indigenous to women's existence. Because she's a woman, it's her identity as a woman that she's raped. So in this analysis of Catherine McKinnon, she does not make a distinguish does not make any distinction between rape as what we call, or the media or the state calls rape when it happens in the external world, like Abaya case and so forth, or in the marital situation. Why? Because being a woman itself is an other of society, and being an other of society, it's something that you're prone to rape, whether it's regulated rape, marriage, or external rape, which is what we call unregulated rape. So let's keep that in mind. Going to come back to that, because our point is to show that there is it's exactly what, see, lynching, she says that it's about lynching. We're going to come back to it, but I'm going to share something else, and this about jihad, and what Islam, how Islam sees the kafir as the other, because here the woman is the other. So I'm going to come back to this. All right. Now let's share something else which we talked about earlier. It's the comprehensive view of jihad. Let me open that, on slavery and jihad and so forth. So let me go. So let's go through this again. Some of you already know this, because the role of patriarchy, what is the role, what is the position of a woman in patriarchy? It's the other. So rape is about power. So for Catherine McKinnon, we are going to go through it again. It doesn't matter whether rape is something that people are calling rape because it's not legal, or a marital rape, because she is the other. Now let's go through jihad, how the kafir has the position of the woman, the othering. There are many versions of jihad, and there are no agreements on jihad. Jihad is an Arabic verbal noun from jahada, which means strain, exertion, endeavor. And E.W. Mills says the using or straining one's utmost power and ability with an object of disapprobation, namely a visible enemy. Lane goes on to the point that jihad came to be used by Muslims to signify waging war against unbelievers and the like. It's a religious duty. How did jihad came into existence? Jihad first came into existence in 661 CE. We are not sure. I mean, it's there in the Quran, but as a practical act, it was termed by the Khwarajis of Persia. How did they use the jihad? As an intra-Muslim conflict, but more, you can raise jihad or revolt against an oppressive monarch. Like French Revolution, the monarch is oppressive and you can raise jihad against it. This view of the Persian Khwarajis, who were Shias, mostly Persians, did not stay for long. So the Sunnis took over, and according to the Khwarajis, it's the sixth pillar of Islam. But the Sunnis took over and it became a mainstream Sunni doctrine. They kind of became sidelined, the Khwarajis. So there are different types of jihad. Jihad bin al-naf, the greatest jihad against one's sinful inclinations. So I'm sinning, I'm desiring food that's bad for my health. And then jihad bin al-naf, I'm controlling it. Suppose I have blood sugar and I'm desiring a lot of sweets which are very bad for me. So I'm controlling it. That's also Aristotle's virtue. Jihad bin al-Shaf, jihad of the sword, and jihad al-Qawal, from which we get probably the word Qawali, preaching of the tongue. In the mainstream Sunni doctrine, jihad is mostly the second one, military jihad. And there's the doctrine of Nasq. I talked about it a lot, from the earlier peaceful Meccan version to the later Median one. Fi sabil Allah, fighting of non-Muslims for the same of name of Islam. The legal interpretation of jihad is always fighting the kufirs. So they have to be annihilated completely. All right. So who are the kafirs? I went over this. They are the real kafirs are the polytheist Hindus. Well, they didn't say Hindus, Buddhist. I'm just saying that polytheist of the time. And then the people of the book, Zoroastrians are probably on the left side. I'm not sure. I would put them on the right side. Christians and Jews, they can still live as dhimmis, which is protected minorities, provided they pay the jizya. But polytheists cannot live. Now, here is very interesting. When I say they cannot live, I don't mean killing always, conversion also. Means their identities are gone, but they're living, but their identities are gone. All right. So even when we amongst the believers there are differences, not equal are those believers remaining at home and those who fight for the cause of Allah. See, in this doctrine or a book, it says that in every decade, when people astray from the path of the true Islam, that is when they're forgetting Allah and the strict monotheism, the Mujahideen is born and he reforms. He's a reformer, brings back people into the strict real path. What is the strict path? To always fight. To always fight. What is the fight for? Is to establish the Darul Islam. We'll come to this. Who can declare a jihad? Only an emir can declare a jihad, even if he's black. Although, we talked about it earlier, that's not true. So this is the philosophy behind jihad. We talked about it, from Darul Harb, ungoverned land, to the peaceful land, Darul Islam. But here is very important. There are Darul Sulh, covenant, Darul Had. There are truce. But this truce does not mean that they are not struggling underground, because the aim is to reach the Darul Islam. They're struggling underground. Permanent Muslim resident in non-Muslim territory is discouraged. There are verses, surahs. The only option is hijrah, to go underground, uswas khasana, to prepare for a military jihad, to strike. Just because someone's quiet doesn't mean that they're really quiet. The battle they're preparing, the battle is going on, because the ultimate aim is this. And there are contradictions. We are not going to go into this. Now, what is the position of the kafir in all of this? The position of the kafir, I'm not going to go into this because I already talked about the doctrine of Nask and so forth. Now let's see what we do. We come back to the question of rape, because we were comparing this, what happened to Dipu Das is really rape. So what is Catherine McKinnon saying? Catherine McKinnon saying that rape is indigenous to women's identity within patriarchy. She's the other. Even Simone de Beauvoir said that. And Simone de Beauvoir, in her Second Sex, she analyzes the definition of a woman. She goes through many definitions, and she says that woman is the other. Where does that come from? Okay, for this I have to do a little history. In Freud, in his Totem and Taboo, said that at one point this is all metaphorical, the father kept all the women to himself. Then one day the brothers rose up in revolt and they killed father and ate his flesh and drank his blood. And in the last totemic meal, they made a promise that they will not enjoy any woman. Not any one of them will do it. So this is a contract. I don't do it, but you don't do it. And so what will they do with the women of the tribe? They'll transfer them to another tribe. So this is the incest taboo. Women of the same blood, we won't have them enjoy them sexually, will transfer them to another tribe. And that is the basis of marriage, according to anthropologist Levi Strauss. So marriage is the transaction of women to establish group bondage. It's political. And we have seen this in our epics, in the Ramayana, Mahabharata. That's a lot of the marriages were political marriage. Same in Europe. marriages were political. The Habsburg dynasty was married to British royalty and so forth. So it's a transaction of women. And according to Simone de Beauvoir, it's through this transaction, which we call marriage, because marriage is a relatively late development in human society. Through this transaction, women became the other, not other just of tribal culture. Simone de Beauvoir says this very well, that the proletariat, the working class, is the other in capitalist society, but woman is the other of every culture, whether it's tribal, whether it's agricultural, whether it's feudal. So she's the cultural other within patriarchy, within that system of power. So, what Catherine McKinnon does is she makes rape non biological. It's a system of power. It's a vast network of power that is making her the other. So, it doesn't matter whether it's consent. We call marriage consensual sex of the woman, but so long as she's the other, it's not. Consent is question mark. So it's a whole system of power that's entrenched within patriarchy. Now what we have studied about jihad and Islam in general, see, there are many interpretations of Quran, but what we can get is there is a very clear boundary between the believer Muslim and the non-believer or the kafirs. So the kafir is the other from the very beginning. There are other interpretations of other things, but you can be a believer, but you may not always struggle to establish the Darul Islam, but you're not the other. But within this framework that Quran is establishing, the kafir is the other. So the lynching of kafir, the burning of kafir, is actually the system of power that rape propagates. Why? Because the kafir is the other. Not only that, what the kafir has epistemological or knowledge problem, intellectual problem, what they are seeing as violence, as terrorism, within the framework set up by the holy system, the holy book of Islam, it is actually the moral duty of the believer. The believer is the Muslim. So if the world is pretty binary in this sense, believer, non-believer, Muslim, kafir. So the kafir has to be eliminated. And that's what genocide is. So what happened to Dipu Das is not a hate crime. And we talked about the difference between hate crime and genocide. It's a symptom of the larger genocide to achieve the Darul Islam, which hasn't happened yet, but it's a step. Now, because kafirs do not think in the way believers do, or have not read the whole text or understand the whole text, what they do not see is whatever within that system, they are the others. They are never the self. This is Hegelian, the self and the other. Just as in patriarchy, women are the other, in capitalism, the workers are the other. In this system, they are the others. And if they are the others, then their violation, their lynching is not only a moral duty, but it's a system of power. Just as Catherine McKinnon is saying, rape is not biological, it's a system of power. It's a whole network. When she's othered, she's the other who has to take in all these oppressions. That's why in genocide, the other, it's not just killing. We talked about the Native American who there's forced conversion, prohibition from speaking their language, and so forth. So all these are parts of genocide. That's why genocide is much, much more, and it doesn't happen in one time. That's why Nagasaki and Hiroshima are not genocides. It's a whole cultural thing. So what's the solution? Well, a state coming in and working when there is an act of violence or terrorism is not the solution, because like patriarchy, it's all pervasive. See, when rape happens, people are out there with candlelight vigil, this, that, but it's not that. Patriarchy is its branches and roots. And that's why it has to be continuous. That's the feminist way of looking at it. Continuous empowerment of the other. Similarly, in this case, it has to be continuous. It's not a one-time thing. That's the meaning of kafir within the Islamic fold, like patriarchy. That's the meaning of kafir, you're the other. So it has to be continuous. It's a whole cultural revolution that we're talking about here. So that was my whole point, a feminist analysis of what happened with Dipu Das. It's not a hate. It's definitely not a hate crime, and it's not a one-time thing. It's a symptom. So that's all for this lecture. A couple of things. All these are in my genocide course, and you can send us. You can ask for it, and in the link, and we will give you that link. And also, it's from our organization. You can take those classes. You have to register, of course, so forth. So please be there with us the next hour, next podcast. An African scholar is going to come and talk about interfaith dialogue. Is it possible when there is so much conflict? Actually, within this system, it's continuous, as I said. If you're the other and if that's how you're perceived, I remember again that the Surah is saying when there is a battle, you can break their neck and so forth. But there is no battle right now. But that's the way Kafirs are looking at the whole thing. Because the Darul Sulk and Darul Had, which are treaties of covenants when believers or Muslims stay under non-believers, the struggle is underground, it's continuous. So that's the whole framework in which we have to put Dipu Das's mob lynching and then burning alive. So that is all for tonight. Stay well, and I'll see you again with African professor Samuel, Reverend Professor Samuel Ayatin Nyangpong on 2nd January, and hopefully you'll all be there. We will do that, and I'll put that up. Thank you very much.